I'll make my point.
Okay.
Do you believe that it is possible to live a meaningful life without a belief in a God?
Sure, but it'd be subjective meaning, wouldn't be objective meaning.
What do you mean?
Well, objective meaning is grounded in the nature of God, His purposes. If we all just die and become worm food, there's no ultimate meaning.
Well, that doesn't diminish the meaning of my life at all. It's true that as you said earlier, we might be wet machines, but my life isn't measured according to that at all. I can live a perfectly meaningful life as this meat robot, even though I don't have that perspective on it. So,
right, for you personally. But if
Right.
Hitler comes along and he says, Tony, I'd really like to kill you because
Right.
it would make me happy, is he wrong?
He might feel that way, but it doesn't matter. I mean, my life is, the
In other
meaning
words,
of your life
Yeah,
is...
I know. In other words, though, is his meaning to kill you, if that's how he gets his meaning, is he wrong?
It's not a question, it's not a factual question.
Well, it is.
He may derive meaning in that,
Right.
but...
It's just subjective meaning, in other words. It's his own subjective meaning against your own subjective meaning. What I'm saying is, only if God exists is there objective meaning. Otherwise, life ultimately is absurd. And this is what the great existentialists have said. Camus and Sartre and others and Nietzsche. So, yes, you can have your own subjective meaning, just like Hitler can have his own subjective meaning to kill you, and you can have your own subjective meaning to do what you want to do, but it's not objective.
I believe life has objective meaning. We all have our own nature, and we live according to that. We all work for our own self-satisfaction, but the things, and this is why I mentioned both of my friends, was that they both had similar problems. They both felt hopeless, but they responded in different ways, regardless of their religion. And that's what I think is what meaning is. It's that ability to look into yourself and find what it is that you take satisfaction from.
And you are a subject. You're right.
Let me pause really quick here to say I think that there's a distinction that needs to be made between the idea of meaning and the idea of value. It sounds to me like this young guy is basically saying that each person can come up with their own basically reason for living, which I would agree with. But the idea of value is, I think, what Frank Turek is more so talking about, like the meaning of your life as it relates to your ontology as a human being. Do you actually have meaning that has been given to you by God, or are you basically just a higher evolved life form? I think the answer to that question really of like what is a human is very much relevant to this conversation. That being said, let's go ahead and dive back in.
You can do that subjectively, but there's no measuring standard outside of you unless God exists. That's what I'm saying.
Right. Your meaning is entirely dependent on you. And that's why I think that religion, for many people, I think they have the mistaken idea that that's the only way they can get meaning in life. And I bring this up.
That's the only way they can get objective meaning. They can have.
There is no such thing as objective meaning. All values are subjective.
Is that an objective statement you just made?
No, it's not.
Okay, well
because to your perspective, it may very well be objective, but it's still ultimately dependent on you. When we talk about values, we're talking about the feelings of an individual. Okay, so it's objectively true that you have subjective values, but they're ultimately dependent on the individual.
So basically what you're saying, Tony, is the pedophile Tom who abused that little girl, Jessica, that wasn't objectively wrong.
No, it was objectively wrong because he was acting contrary to his nature as a human being.
No, he wasn't.
Oh,
he was acting right in accord with his compass. His subjective compass told him that's what he wanted. Why is he wrong if there's no standard beyond him?
There is an objective morality, but it's no one in the normal course of their lives does something like that. It is in man's nature to be loving and peaceful toward other people. There are exceptions. I know the audience doesn't believe that, but let me demonstrate that. No one in this room has managed to hit each other, in spite that there are many people who are in disagreement. No one's swearing at each other. We all have peaceful nature.
Okay.
That man was acting contrary to his nature as a human being, and that is why it is immoral.
Tony, do you have children?
No, I don't.
Okay, so you haven't been through the terrible twos. Okay?
No, I don't.
Okay, so you don't have to tell a child to say mine. You have to teach them to share, because our nature is bent toward evil.
No, it's not.
All right, well,
It's not. Children,
You can kind of see Frank Turek here going like, all right, if we can't even agree that it's more difficult to train a child to do something that is other-centered as opposed to self-centered, he's like, you can see the moment where he's like, I don't know how much common ground we could even find to build the conversation out of.
No child goes out and does what the wicked things that adults do, right? No child. When was the last time? When was the last time a child murdered someone, raped someone, kidnapped someone? It's an absurdity. If your children were really so violent, you would have them institutionalized. And there are some children like that, but the majority of people fundamentally do right.
Okay,
And do wrong is the exception to the rule.
but Tony, and this is the last thing because we got a line behind.
I understand.
Okay. On one hand, a minute ago you were saying there are no objective values, and now you're telling me that children do right. Now, which is it?
They don't always do right,
What do you mean by right?
as in acting according to their nature.
And whose nature? Mother Teresa's nature or
No,
Hitler's nature?
our nature as human beings is reasoning animals, right? We all have our own. We all understand why we don't do that to each other because we wouldn't have it done
Do
unto
what
us.
to one another? What value are you talking about?
The value of not doing violence onto each
Why
other.
is that wrong if there's no God?
It's wrong because we would never have it done to us.
So what? Why does Hitler care if he kills you?
He doesn't. But
Okay.
that's still
Why
wrong.
is he wrong? Or is he wrong?
Would Hitler approve of my killing him?
What does
if
that matter?
If he's enforcing a morality on me that he is not giving to himself, then he's suggesting that he's something other than human, right?
Okay.
So he's falling into contradiction because he may steal from me, but he would never tolerate my stealing from him. All morality must be universal, as I believe the point of your presentation was.
Well, it is universal, but it's grounded in the nature of God. But you a minute
Not
ago
God,
told me
in
it's
man.
just subjective.
It's not, because if you look in God.
Okay, all right, Tony, please. Okay, why don't we do this? I'm happy to talk to you all night if you want to talk
Yeah.
about it, but not in front of everybody right
I
now.
apologize to the people behind me. I
Okay,
didn't
so
mean to take up so much
let's
time, but-
hang around and you and I can talk more.
Sure.
All right, last thing, Tony. Last thing. I don't remember the answer to this question last
Yes.
year. You would become a Christian.
Yes.
Did I give you a book last year?
No.
If I had a book, I'd give it. You give me your address, I'll send it to you.
Oh, thanks.
Okay?
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
By the way, the book there that he's talking about is called I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. That's Frank Turek's book. And he asked people that question if they would read his book at the end of a lot of his Q&As, which I think is pretty cool. I was going to say this. I really like this young guy. I think that he's smart. However, I think that he doesn't realize that the primary problem that he's making in his thinking is that he says that morality and value and meaning is rooted in man, not in God. He hasn't really thought about how if there isn't a God, if there's not design, and if there's not purpose, and if there's not like everlasting life, and if we're not actually made in God's image, then we are literally just moist robots. And this is so common. You see this. People will say humans are just material, just like the rest of the material in the universe, but the way that we feel about ourselves and the meaning that we feel that we have is objective, and the values and the morality that we kind of intuitively know is objective. And my question would be this, like, how do you get there, basically? How do you possibly get there, logically speaking? And I think this creates a huge problem where what you really have to do is you actually have to start with those commonly accepted truths that do exist, which is we do know that there's actually morality. That is a real thing. We do sense at the deepest level of who we are that there is meaning. And so what you have to do is you have to say, well, how do you best explain these realities? So with all that being said, again, I like this kid because he actually does bring the key distinction between atheism and Christianity to the surface. It's either that humans are biological animals, like we're just matter in motion, or we are the handiwork of God. The answer to that question really dictates everything else. Everything else is downstream from that distinction as it relates to meaning and as it relates to morality.
Hey you guys, I'm just reviewing this video and I want to add one thought that I didn't add in my sort of official commentary at the end that I think is actually really important, and it is this. Those who seek God find God. When you draw close to God, He draws close to you. So I urge you today, because the hours are short that we have in this life, it goes by really, really fast. And I urge you today, if you're listening to this, please at least consider what I'm saying. I'm not trying to win an argument. I'm not trying to win a debate. I am genuinely pleading with you as someone who has been on both sides of this aisle to consider Jesus and to consider what he's done, and tell me if you can find anything better anywhere else. I have looked and I have found, and there's no one like Jesus. More than that, I have tasted and I have seen that the Lord is good. And so my motivation in a video like this, and in particular in this little caveat that I'm giving to you, is I want you to also taste and see that the Lord is good, that he does have a never giving up kind of love that is directed towards you in particular through his life and his death and his resurrection. It's Jesus, folks. He is the center of reality. He is the manifestation of the invisible God on this planet. And he is the lover of your soul, and he is the reason for your being. It's Jesus. He has the never giving up kind of love for YOU. That being said, I'll get back to the other me, but I've got to say that. It's in my heart for you guys, for somebody.
All that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this clip. I certainly did. Love these Q&As, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks. Bye.